You spend your whole life protecting your children, building a legacy so they won't ever have to struggle. I worked double shifts for 30 years to pay off my $720,000 home, so when my own flesh and blood forged my signature to steal it, he had no idea he was stepping directly into a trap. My name is Bryony. I'm 72 years old, a retired head nurse, and a widow. My husband, Charles, and I bought our 4-bedroom, wraparound porch Victorian in the historic West End of Atlanta 40 years ago. Back then, it was a modest neighborhood. Today, with all the gentrification, the flippers, and the new coffee shops popping up on every corner, the county assessed my property at $720,000. It's completely paid off, not a dime owed. I have 2 children. My daughter, Clara, lives up in Maryland with her family. She's a teacher, steady, reliable, and calls me every Sunday. Then there is my son, Darnell. Darnell is 45, wears suits that cost more than my first car, and possesses a smile that could talk a starving dog off a meat bone. He was my baby boy. Charles used to warn me that I spoiled him, that I was making the road too smooth for him. But what mother doesn't want her son to feel like a king? I paid for his business degree. I bailed out his first failed venture, a luxury car rental service. I even helped pay for his wedding to Chloe, a woman whose appetite for designer handbags vastly outpaced her willingness to hold down a job. Things started shifting around Thanksgiving last year. Darnell, who usually only visited when he needed a temporary loan, suddenly started coming by 3 times a week. He'd bring me groceries I didn't ask for. He'd insist on mowing my lawn, even though I pay Mr. Henderson $50 every 2 weeks to do it. "Mama, you're looking a little tired," Darnell said one Tuesday, setting a plastic container of store-bought potato salad on my kitchen counter. "You shouldn't be rattling around this big old house all by yourself. The stairs are getting to be too much for your knees." "My knees are fine, Darnell," I replied, sipping my tea. "I carried double my weight in bedpans for 30 years. I can walk up 12 carpeted steps." Then came Chloe. She started dropping by with glossy brochures for places with names like the Whispering Pines Resort for Seniors. "It's like a cruise ship that never leaves land, Bay," she chirped one afternoon, her acrylic nails tapping against the glossy photos of smiling white-haired people playing pickleball. "They have a chef, and it's so safe. I am safe right here," I told her, my tone polite but firm. The real red flag didn't wave. It slapped me right across the face. It was a rainy Tuesday. I had come home early from my church choir practice because a migraine was creeping up the base of my neck. I walked through the back door quietly, taking off my wet boots in the mudroom. As I passed the hallway, I heard a scraping sound coming from my late husband's old study. I peeked around the doorframe. There was Darnell. He was kneeling in front of my heavy oak desk, forcefully jiggling a butter knife into the lock of my fireproof document box. That box held my original deed, Charles's life insurance paperwork, and my will. My heart didn't just break in that moment. It turned cold. As a nurse, you learn to compartmentalize panic. You learn that when a patient starts crashing, screaming doesn't save them. Observation and action do. I stepped back into the hallway, walked heavily on the hardwood to announce my presence, and called out, "Darnell? Is somebody in here?" I heard a loud thud, followed by the frantic shuffling of papers. Darnell emerged into the hallway, his face flushed, wiping dust off his expensive slacks. "Hey, Mama! You're home early. I was looking for that old photo album, the one from our trip to Florida. Chloe wanted to see a picture of me as a kid." "The photo albums are in the attic, Darnell," I said, my voice steady. "They have been for 20 years. "Right. Silly me," he laughed, though his eyes darted nervously to the side. "I gotta run, Mama. Big meeting. Love you." He kissed my cheek. It felt like Judas. When he left, I went into the study. The lock on the box was scratched, but he hadn't managed to get it open. However, he didn't know I kept a secondary folder in the filing cabinet with copies of everything, including a blank, unexecuted power of attorney form Sylvia, my lawyer, had drafted years ago just in case of a medical emergency. I opened the filing cabinet. The power of attorney form was gone. I didn't call him to scream. I didn't confront him. Instead, I called my eldest grandson, Malik Clara's boy, who works in cybersecurity down in Midtown. Malik, baby, I said when he answered, I need you to come down here this weekend and bring those little hidden cameras people use to watch their dogs, the ones you can check on your phone. Grandma B? Is everything okay? Is someone prowling around? You could say that, I replied, looking out my window at the street. Just come down, and don't tell your Uncle Darnell. Malik installed 4 discrete cameras. One in the living room, one in the kitchen, one in the hallway, and one tucked behind the volumes of encyclopedias in the study. He linked them directly to an app on my iPad. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Darnell continued his charade of the doting son, bringing me lukewarm coffee and commenting on how forgetful I seemed lately. He started planting seeds, gaslighting me in my own home. He'd move my keys from the hook by the door to the kitchen counter, then ask me if I was feeling all right when I couldn't find them. He didn't know I could re-watch the footage and see him moving them. Then, on a Thursday morning, Darnell showed up with a white man in a cheap suit carrying a leather clipboard. "Mama!" Darnell called out, walking right in with his spare key. "I brought Arthur. He's a structural engineer. I noticed some sagging in the floorboards upstairs, and I just wanted him to make sure the foundation is safe." I looked at Arthur. He had the shifty, dead-eyed look of a man who makes his living in the grey areas of the law. "The floorboards are fine," I said. "Charles reinforced those joists himself in '98. Just a precaution, Mrs. Foster," Arthur said smoothly, giving me a patronizing smile. "We just want to make sure you're safe in your old age." I sat in my armchair with my knitting and watched them. They didn't go upstairs to check the floorboards right away. They went to the kitchen. They measured the granite countertops. They went to the living room and checked the original crown molding. They looked at the HVAC unit outside. Arthur wasn't a structural engineer. He was a real estate appraiser. The moment Darnell's BMW pulled out of my driveway, I grabbed my coat, my purse, and my iPad, and I drove straight to the law offices of Rossi and Associates. Sylvia Rossi is a shark in a tailored pantsuit. She helped me finalize Charles's estate, and she doesn't suffer fools. When I sat down in her leather chair and explained what was happening, her eyes narrowed behind her wire-rimmed glasses. "Bea, are you telling me you think your son is trying to sell your house out from under you?" "I don't think it, Sylvia." "I know it," I said, sliding the iPad across her desk. I played the footage from the study, captured just the day before. In the video, Darnell was on his cell phone pacing my floor. His voice was crystal clear. "Look, Chloe, I got the POA notarized yesterday." Arthur stamped it. "Yes, I backdated it to when she had that bad flu in October. The buyer is lined up, Preston Caldwell. He's offering $650,000 cash, off market. It's a steal for him, but it clears the $500,000 I owe the logistics creditors and leaves us enough to move her into that home and take a vacation. She won't even understand what happened until it's done." Sylvia's jaw tightened. She hit pause on the video and leaned back. My God. He forged a durable power of attorney. He had his buddy Arthur falsely notarize it. And he's arranging an off-market cash sale to Preston Caldwell, a notoriously slimy developer who buys up distressed properties from desperate people. "Can we stop it?" I asked. "Bae, we can do more than stop it," Sylvia said, her fingers flying across her computer keyboard as she logged into the county clerk's database. "I can file an injunction right now. I can call the police. We can have Darnell arrested for forgery and elder abuse by dinner time." I looked at the paused image of my son on the screen. The boy I had rocked to sleep. The boy I had worked myself to the bone for. He was willing to strip me of my independence, my home, and my sanity, just to cover his own reckless debts. If I stopped it now, he would just claim it was a misunderstanding. He would cry, apologize, and manipulate the family into thinking I was a crazy old woman overreacting. He would get a slap on the wrist. No, I said softly. Sylvia stopped typing and looked at me. No? If you file an injunction now, he runs, I said, my voice hardening. He shreds the evidence. He claims I gave him verbal permission and forgot. I know my son, Sylvia. He is a master at slipping out of traps. So what do you want to do? I want him to walk all the way into the snare, I said, leaning forward. I want him to sign the closing documents. I want him to take the money. I want Preston Caldwell sitting at that table, complicit in fraud. I want the notary, Arthur, nailed to the wall. I want to build a case so ironclad that the district attorney won't even have to blink before sending my son to prison. Sylvia stared at me for a long, quiet moment. Slowly, a fierce, predatory smile spread across her face. B. Foster, you are a dangerous woman. I am a mother who is done being a victim. I corrected her. What do we need to do? First, Sylvia said, grabbing a legal pad. We let the transaction proceed. I will quietly flag the title with the county clerk through a back-channel contact, ensuring that the deed transfer cannot legally clear, but allowing it to appear as though it's processing. Second, we need to guarantee that Darnell feels entirely confident that you are not a threat. He needs to believe you are incompetent. He already thinks I'm losing my mind, I said bitterly. He's been moving my keys, asking me about conversations we never had. Then lean into it, Sylvia advised. Give him the performance of a lifetime. Make him think he has to rush the sale before you require full-time, state-mandated care. Meanwhile, I am going to hire a private investigator to look into his debts, this Arthur character, and Preston Caldwell. We are going to tie them all together in a neat, criminal bow. When I drove home that afternoon, the house felt different. It wasn't just a home anymore. It was a stage. And I was about to deliver an Oscar-worthy performance. That evening, Darnell came by with dinner. I made sure to leave the stove burner on low with nothing on it. When he walked into the kitchen, his eyes lit up with fake concern. "Mama, you left the gas on." He rushed over, turning the knob. "You could have burned the house down." I looked at him, letting my eyes go wide and vacant. I let my hands tremble just a little. I was making tea, Darnell. I must have forgot the kettle. "Mama," he said, putting his arm around my shoulder, a poorly concealed smirk playing on his lips. "It's getting dangerous for you here. But don't worry. I've got everything under control. Your boy is going to take care of you." "Yes," I thought, staring at the blank wall. "And your mama is going to take care of you." Playing the fool in your own home is a bitter, jagged pill to swallow. For the next 3 weeks, I became a ghost of the woman I used to be. I started wearing my housecoat until noon. I would ask Darnell the same question 3 times in a 10-minute span. I even deliberately called Chloe by the name of Darnell's high school girlfriend. A petty but deeply satisfying maneuver that made Chloe's fake, Botox-frozen smile twitch with genuine irritation. Darnell ate it up. His initial nervousness vanished, replaced by a smug, patronizing confidence. He truly believed his own mother's mind was decaying right on schedule to solve his financial ruin. While Darnell was measuring my living room for the estate liquidators he secretly planned to hire, Sylvia's private investigator was measuring Darnell for a prison jumpsuit. The investigator's name was Griffin Cole, a retired Atlanta police detective, with a gravelly voice and a talent for digging up the dirt people tried to bury in concrete. One rainy afternoon, while Darnell and Chloe were out touring the Whispering Pines Resort for seniors, picking out the shoebox-sized room they intended to banish me to, Griffin met me and Sylvia in her office. Griffin tossed a thick manila folder onto the mahogany table. "Your son has been busy, Mrs. Foster," he he grunted, taking a sip of the black coffee Sylvia had poured him. And none of it is good. I opened the folder. The first page was a rap sheet for Arthur, the so-called structural engineer. Arthur Finch, Griffin explained, tapping a thick finger on a mugshot of the man who had been in my living room. Disbarred paralegal. He lost his notary license 5 years ago for, you guessed it, falsifying signatures on property deeds for elderly folks in Fulton County. He avoided jail time by rolling on his boss. But he's been running these shadow operations ever since. What about Preston Caldwell? Sylvia asked, her pen poised over her legal pad. Caldwell is a shark, Griffin replied. He runs a shell company called Apex Holdings. He buys distressed properties for cash, usually off-market, preying on desperate families facing foreclosure. He pays pennies on the dollar, slaps a cheap coat of grey paint on the walls, and flips them to tech transplants for double the price. But here is the kicker. He knows the power of attorney Darnell holds is a forgery. I intercepted an email exchange between Caldwell and your son. Caldwell explicitly told Darnell, "Make sure the old lady is completely isolated before we close. If she talks to a bank teller or a neighbor, the deal is dead." I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Preston Caldwell is knowingly participating in the fraud. Absolutely, Griffin nodded. Which elevates this from simple forgery to conspiracy and wire fraud. But the real tragedy, Mrs. Foster, is why Darnell is doing this. Griffin flipped to the back of the folder, revealing a stack of bank statements and aggressive legal demand letters. Darnell's logistics company went bankrupt 8 months ago, Griffin said softly, his gruff demeanor softening just a fraction. He hid it from everyone. To keep up his lifestyle with Chloe, he took out massive, high-interest loans from unregulated private lenders. We're talking loan sharks. B. He owes upwards of $450,000. They threaten to take his house, his cars, and possibly his kneecaps. He's desperate. I stared at the financial ruin laid out on the table. My son, my baby boy, had gambled his life away to impress a woman who only loved his wallet. And to save his own skin, he was going to sacrifice mine. The last lingering shred of maternal hesitation evaporated right then and there. When is the closing? I asked, my voice steady and cold. Sylvia checked her notes. According to the forged documents we intercepted through the county clerk's flagging system, the closing is scheduled for this coming Friday. 10 a.m. They are doing it at Caldwell's private office in Buckhead to avoid a traditional title company asking too many questions. Will Darnell need me there? I asked. No, Sylvia smiled, a dangerous, sharp expression. That's the beauty of a durable power of attorney. He assumes he has total legal authority to sign your house away on your behalf. He plans to go in, sign the deed, take the $650,000 wire transfer, and pay off his debts by noon. So, what is the trap? I asked. Sylvia leaned forward. I have reached out to a contact at the FBI's white-collar crime division, Agent Thomas Miller. He's been trying to build a RICO case against Preston Caldwell for 2 years, but could never get a victim willing to go on the record. I showed him the hidden camera footage, the forged POA, and the emails. Miller is ecstatic. We let Darnell sign the papers, Griffin chimed in. The moment the ink dries and Caldwell initiates the wire transfer, the federal crime is complete. Conspiracy, forgery, elder exploitation, and federal wire fraud. Friday, I whispered, closing the folder. Let's give them exactly what they want. Thursday night, the eve of the closing, Darnell came over. He brought a bottle of sparkling cider and a bouquet of cheap grocery store lilies. Mama, he said, sitting on the edge of my floral sofa. He looked exhausted. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his hands had a slight tremor. The pressure of the loan sharks was clearly eating him alive. I have some great news. Oh? I asked, looking up from my knitting. Did Clara call? No. No, not Clara. he said, waving his hand dismissively. I found a place for you. The Whispering Pines. It's beautiful, Mama. They have a spot opening up next week. I've already taken the liberty of paying the deposit for you. It's time you had round-the-clock care, where you don't have to worry about a thing. I looked at my son. I looked past the expensive suit, past the designer watch, and saw the terrified, selfish little boy hiding underneath. But Darnell, I said, keeping my voice frail, how will I pay for it? And what about my house? Charles and I built our lives here. Don't you worry your pretty head about the house, Darnell said, patting my knee. I'm taking care of all the paperwork. You just rest. I've got meetings all morning tomorrow, but I'll come by in the afternoon to start helping you pack. He hugged me before he left. I smelled his expensive cologne, layered over the sour scent of nervous sweat. As the front door clicked shut behind him, I stood up, my spine straightening, the frail old womanac dropping instantly. I walked to my kitchen, poured the sparkling cider down the drain, and threw the lilies in the trash. Friday morning broke crisp and clear. At 8:30 a.m., an unmarked black SUV pulled into my driveway. Griffin Cole stepped out, followed by Special Agent Thomas Miller, a tall, sharp-eyed man in a navy suit, and Sylvia Rossi. I invited them in, serving black coffee at my kitchen island. Good morning, Mrs. Foster, Agent Miller said, setting a secure, encrypted laptop on my granite counter. Are you ready for this? Once we initiate the sting, there is no going back. Your son will be arrested. Agent Miller, I said, looking him dead in the eye. My son arrested himself the day he took a butter knife to my lockbox. I am just making sure he faces the judge. Miller nodded respectfully. He opened the laptop. Through Sylvia's coordination and a cooperating insider at Preston Caldwell's bank, the FBI had mirrored the escrow account, where Caldwell's $650,000 was sitting, waiting to be wired into Darnell's fraudulent LLC. At 9:45 a.m., Darnell walked into Preston Caldwell's high-rise office in Buckhead. We couldn't see them, but Agent Miller had a live audio feed tapped from the cooperating bank officer who was virtually attending the closing to authorize the wire. The audio crackled to life over the laptop speakers. Gentlemen, Preston Caldwell's slick, oily voice echoed in my kitchen. Let's make this quick. Darnell, you have the original power of attorney, right here. Darnell's voice replied. It sounded tight, strained. Arthur notarized it. My mother is fully incapacitated. She doesn't even know what day it is. I closed my eyes, hearing him say it, confirming his utter lack of remorse to strangers, was the final nail in the coffin of my grief. Excellent, Caldwell said. The purchase price is $650,000. As agreed. Sign here, here, and initial the addendum stating the property is sold as is. There was the sound of rustling paper, the scratching of a heavy fountain pen. Done! Darnell exhaled, a massive breath of relief audible in the microphone. Now, the wire transfer. My creditors expect payment by 1 p.m. Patience, Darnell, Caldwell chuckled. Transferring now. Agent Miller's fingers flew across his keyboard. He watched the digital numbers on his screen. The $650,000 moved from Caldwell's account, hovered in the federal clearing system, and attempted to land in Darnell's account. Wire initiated, Miller said quietly to our kitchen audience. The federal crime has crossed state lines via the banking servers. We have them. Miller tapped a key, and the FBI's cyber division instantly froze the funds in transit. At the exact same moment, he keyed his radio microphone. Strike team, this is Miller. The Eagle has landed. Execute the warrant. In my quiet kitchen in the West End, Sylvia placed her hand gently over mine. We sat in silence, listening to the audio feed from the Buckhead office. For 2 minutes, There was just the sound of Darnell and Caldwell making small talk, pouring scotch to celebrate their theft. Then, chaos erupted. FBI! Nobody move! Hands where I can see them! The sound of shattering glass, someone had dropped a decanter. Caldwell started shouting. What the hell is this? I'm a legitimate businessman! Then came my son's voice. High-pitched, panicked, reverting to the scared boy who used to break windows and blame the neighbors. Wait! No! There's a mistake. My mother authorized this. I have the POA. Call my mother. Darnell Foster. A stern federal agent's voice boomed over the feed. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, elder exploitation, and forgery. You have the right to remain silent. Agent Miller reached out and cut the audio feed. The kitchen was plunged into a heavy, absolute silence. The trap had snapped shut. The beast was caught. The silence that descended upon my kitchen after Agent Miller cut the audio feed was absolute. It was the heavy, breathless quiet that follows a devastating storm. Miller carefully closed his encrypted laptop. The sharp click of the latch, echoing off the granite countertops like a vault sealing shut. He looked up at me, his expression a mixture of professional satisfaction and profound human sympathy. Sylvia simply reached out and placed her warm hand over my cold, trembling fingers. I had done it. I had saved my home, my legacy, and my independence. But the price was the boy I had carried in my womb. The stillness didn't last long. Less than an hour after the FBI raided Preston Caldwell's Buckhead office, my cell phone began to vibrate aggressively across the kitchen island. The caller ID flashed. Chloe. Sylvia glanced at the screen, her eyebrows raised, silently asking if I wanted her to intercept it. I shook my head. I let it ring 3 times, taking a slow, deep breath to steady my racing heart, before I swiped the screen and lifted the phone to my ear. Hello? I asked, my voice completely steady. A stark contrast to the chaos I knew was unfolding on the other end. Bay! Oh my God! Bay! You have to get down here right now! Chloe was practically hyperventilating, the shrill, panicked pitch of her voice grating against my ear. Through the receiver, I could hear the heavy thud of boots and the muffled shouts of federal agents tearing through her pristine, designer-furnished home. Darnell has been arrested. The FBI just raided his office, and now they are here at the house. They're boxing up his computers, his files. They told me they froze our bank accounts. They seized the Mercedes beer. They're saying he tried to steal your house. You have to call them and tell them it's a mistake. Tell them you gave him permission to sell it. B, do you hear me? I walked slowly out of the kitchen, leaving Sylvia and the agents behind, and stepped into my living room. I looked around at the pristine, original crown molding Darnell and his fake appraiser had measured, ready to sell it to the highest bidder. I touched the fabric of the floral armchair where Charles used to sit and read the Sunday paper. Chloe, I said softly, cutting through her hysterical rambling. It wasn't a mistake. The line went dead quiet. For a long, agonizing moment, all I could hear was her shallow, rapid breathing and the distant sound of an agent asking for the keys to Darnell's safe. What do you mean? She stammered, the aggressive entitlement completely draining from her voice. I mean, I watched my son try to break into my lockbox with a butter knife, I said, dropping the frail, confused old woman facade entirely. My voice hardened into iron. I mean, I set up hidden cameras. I mean, I recorded him bringing a disbarred, disgraced notary into my home to forge a power of attorney. And I mean, I sat at my kitchen counter with the FBI this morning, listening while he signed my legacy over to a criminal just to cover the $500,000 he owes to loan sharks. You knew? She whispered, the horrifying realization dawning on her. The safety net she thought she had was actually a snare. I knew everything from the very beginning, I replied, feeling a cold, righteous anger finally bubbling to the surface. You wanted to put me in a home, Chloe. You picked out the brochures. Now Darnell is going to one. And it doesn't have a pickleball court. I suggest you start looking for a job. Those designer handbags you love so much won't pay for his federal defense attorney. I hung up the phone, went into my settings, and permanently blocked her number. The legal fallout over the next few weeks was spectacular, swift, and entirely merciless. Sylvia's meticulously built case, combined with Agent Miller's flawless wire fraud trap, left Darnell, Arthur, and Preston Caldwell with absolutely no room to maneuver. The evidence was insurmountable. Caldwell, the slick developer, hired a team of expensive lawyers and tried to claim total ignorance. He swore up and down he thought the power of attorney was legitimate and that he was just an innocent buyer. But Agent Miller had the subpoenaed emails. He had the recorded phone calls of Caldwell explicitly telling Darnell to keep me isolated. Caldwell's lucrative real estate empire crumbled to dust within 48 hours as the feds seized his business assets, his properties, and his offshore accounts under RICO statutes. Arthur, the fake structural engineer, didn't even try to put up a fight. The moment the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, he sang like a canary, flipping on everyone and taking a plea deal to save his own skin. But Darnell fought the reality of his situation. He couldn't believe his mother, the woman who had bailed him out of every scrape since he was a toddler, had actually pulled the trigger. 3 weeks after his arrest, the initial shock had worn off, and the reality of federal holding had set in. I requested a visitation at the downtown facility. I didn't go in my housecoat. I wore my best Sunday church suit, a deep navy blue that commanded respect, and the pearls Charles had bought me for our 25th wedding anniversary. I wanted Darnell to see the proud, strong woman he had tried to erase. The facility smelled of industrial bleach, stale sweat, and despair. When the guards finally brought Darnell out into the visitation room, my breath hitched in my throat. He looked a decade older. The tailored Italian suits were gone, replaced by a stiff, oversized, drab orange jumpsuit. His perfectly faded haircut was unkempt, his posture defeated, his shoulders slumped under the weight of his own hubris. He sat down on the other side of the thick, smudged plexiglass and picked up the heavy black telephone receiver. His hands were shaking violently. "Mama," he choked out the moment our eyes met. Tears instantly spilled over his lashes, streaming down his face. "Mama, please! I'm so sorry. You have to believe me. I was desperate. The people I owed money to, they aren't like normal banks. They threatened to kill me. They threatened Chloe. I didn't want to hurt you. I was going to make sure you were taken care of at Whispering Pines. I swear to God, Mama, I was going to visit you every week." I looked at my baby boy. I looked at the child I had sung to sleep when he had a fever. The teenager I had worked double shifts to put through college so he wouldn't have student loans. A profound, hollow grief washed over me, heavy and suffocating. It took everything in my power as a mother not to press my hand against the glass and tell him it would be okay. But I knew that if I did, I would just be handing him the knife to stab me with again. "You didn't want to hurt me, Darnell?" I asked. My voice carried through the receiver, calm, deliberate, and devastatingly cold. "You lied to my face for weeks. You gaslit me into thinking my mind was failing. You let me believe I was losing my sanity. You were willing to let me die in a sterile, shoebox room surrounded by strangers, stripped of my dignity and my home, just so you wouldn't have to face the consequences of your own greed." "Mama, I can change," he sobbed, pressing his trembling hand against the thick glass, leaving a sweaty print. "Talk to the district attorney. Please, Sylvia will listen to you, if you tell them you changed your mind. If you tell them to drop the charges, they will. Tell them it was a massive misunderstanding." "Please, Mama, I'm your son." "You can't let them lock me in here." "Yes, you are my son," I said, leaning closer to the glass, my eyes locked on his desperate ones. "And I spent 45 years protecting you from the harshness of the world. I smoothed over every rocky road. I bailed you out of every single mistake you ever made. And what did my protection teach you? It taught you that you could steal the very roof over my head, forge my name, and expect me to smile and hand you the keys. I stood up slowly, smoothing the skirt of my navy suit, and adjusted my purse on my arm. I love you, Darnell. I always will. But I am not protecting you anymore. You are a grown man. It is time you finally pay your own debts. Mama, don't leave, please. I'm begging you, he screamed. His voice cracked, echoing loudly through the receiver. He slammed his free hand against the plexiglass, but the guards were already stepping forward, grabbing him by the shoulders to restrain him. I gently placed the receiver back onto the cradle, cutting off his pleas. I turned my back to the glass, keeping my spine perfectly straight, and walked out of the visitation room, through the heavy metal doors, and out into the bright, blinding Atlanta sunshine. I didn't cry then. I held it together for another 24 hours. Clara flew down from Maryland the very next morning. She had been briefed by Sylvia and Malik, and the moment she walked through my front door, she dropped her bags and wrapped her arms tightly around my neck. We walked out to the wraparound porch and sat on the wicker swing. She poured us both glasses of sweet tea, the condensation dripping down the sides of the glasses in the humid afternoon heat. And there, sitting next to my daughter, on the porch Charles had built for us, the dam finally broke. I buried my face in my hands and wept. I sobbed for the son I thought I had, for the betrayal that had shattered my heart, and for the sheer, terrifying exhaustion of having to destroy my own child to survive. Clara just held me, rubbing my back as the tears soaked into her shirt. "You did what you had to do, Mama," she whispered fiercely into my hair. "He would have left you with nothing. You protected our family's legacy. You protected yourself. Dad would be so incredibly proud of the strength you showed." 6 months later, the legal proceedings concluded quietly. Recognizing that his own mother was the prosecution's unshakable star witness, and with the mountain of federal wire fraud evidence against him, Darnell officially took a plea deal. He was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for conspiracy to commit wire fraud and elder exploitation. Preston Caldwell, the architect of the shadow deals, received a much harsher sentence of 8 years. As I had predicted, Chloe's loyalty was intrinsically tied to Darnell's bank account. Entirely broke, disgraced, and aggressively pursued by the remainder of Darnell's furious creditors, she quickly filed for divorce. Last I heard, she had moved back into her childhood bedroom with her parents in Ohio, working as a receptionist at a dental clinic. The hidden cameras Malik installed in my house are still up and running, but there are no more intruders to catch. Now, I just use the iPad app to watch the neighborhood stray cats that wander through my garden at night, looking for the sources of milk I leave out for them. I built this house with sweat and love, and I won't let anyone steal my peace, not even the boy I raised. Darnell traded his freedom for a shortcut, and now he has 5 years to think about it. As for me, I'm sitting on my wraparound porch, sipping sweet tea and watching the sunset. My legacy is safe. The trap worked perfectly.